from everything I've looked at in the data, if you are watching the show, you are likely a millennial, an elder millennial, or Gen X. But I just saw this article the other day. A new survey says that nearly half of Gen Z would pick money over finding love. More accurately put, they would choose financial security over finding love. So it says a stunning 46% of Gen Zers, or I'll give this to you guys here. Oh, go ahead.
They would pick financial security over love?
They would pick long-term financial stability over romance, and close to 1 in 3 said they'd even take a former partner back if that ex got rich.
I mean, this isn't surprising because this is reflected in the birth rate, because that's what people are actively doing. They're actively choosing financial security over love. That's happening on a mass scale.
I still believe that the argument that people aren't having kids because of economics, I believe that isn't true.
No, I agree, but the lifestyle changes. It's not the lack of money, it's that people are adjusting their lifestyles around that exclude children.
Wait, so explain that then. You don't think that that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, look, the poorest places in the world have the most kids.
Exactly.
I mean, but this might be a survey like this is centered here in the U.S., right? So,
well, I think it's nested. It's not that people are broke so they're not having kids. It's that the lifestyle that you have to have in America in 2025 is not conducive for children, and children are very restrictive of that lifestyle because it's about going out and having time to vacation and these sorts of things, and then also it really primarily affects women because women are working. I mean, that's the thing no one wants to talk about, is just the birth rate primarily is affected by women's participation in the workforce.
So the June 2025 survey asked Americans how money shapes their dating habits. Gen Xers were even worse. Even worse than the Gen Zers. It says 52% said they choose money over love, but Gen Z wasn't far behind, as I said, 46%. They've got a number in mind, too. 1 in 10 Gen Z women say their ideal match should be making $200,000 or more, and most won't settle for anything less than $80K.
This is proof
disgusting.
That Gen Z is just a supercharged version of Gen X. And I'm like, you can look at all these different behavior, because it's clear that Gen Z was primarily raised by Gen X, because there's a lot of behavioral.
And that gets missed too, because most people just say boomers.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of traits that were passed on. Like boomers and millennials are similar in some very meaningful ways, but Gen X and Zoomers are very similar. Like the biggest trait I think is both generations are particularly like neurotic compared to previous generations. And
Gen X? No.
Gen X is it's more nuanced, and then Gen Z, it got supercharged.
Gen X is not particularly neurotic. It's millennials that are neurotic. Gen X was left to raise themselves a lot of the time. Like Gen X is the generation of latchkey kids, where both parents were not at home when they got home, and they got inside.
Well, that's what I mean.
They had to put the ad on TV to remind you to tell to make sure your kids.
Well, I think that's why Gen X, they did have that sense of like self-doubt, emotional. I don't want to say instability, but like there was a lot of traits that happened in Gen X because they were exposed to the boomers' embrace of divorce and these sorts of things.
I would be interested to see the evidence to that, or what it is that makes. Well,
what I'm saying is I don't think it resulted in what we see like neuroticism now, where people are like have depression, like clinical depression and anxiety. But I think Gen X was the first generation to truly be exposed to the effects of like the postmodern world. And so they were on the receiving end. They were basically like the test rats in a lot of ways to like the boomers, because the boomers recreated the world effectively. And Gen X was the first generation that was really, I mean, they caught the tail end of the old world, but they were pretty much the first generation entirely exposed to the new way of life, the new modern world. So I'm not saying neurotic because that's how we think of it now, where that, they have like clinical anxiety, but I do think that they were the first generation that received it. And had to adjust their lifestyles accordingly. Where millennials kind of remind me more of boomers. Where they're also like very neurotic in the sense of anxiety and depression, but they seem to be a little bit more like live and let live, kind of. I would say
the millennials.
They seem more careless about like the world around them in the same way boomers are. Like,
I feel like aren't millennials kind of part of the culture that has created the politically correct world that we live in now? I feel like they're like, I'm the live and let live person. But I don't feel like I'm indicative of the average millennial.
I guess as far as like they're comfortable rearranging society and in their image, and boomers are very much that way of rearranging and breaking conventional
Millennials
norms.
are.
Yeah, I think millennials are very much also in the realm of recreating society and their image of what they assume is like pious or whatever.
So
where I think Gen X is very much more like kind of go with the flow, and Zoomers are kind of the same way. It's like there's a sense of nihilism. Like, and my evidence for this is I don't think there'll ever be a Gen X president.
don't think so?
No, because Gen X is also in some ways reflective of the lost generation or the silent generation.
Would that mean that if JD Vance won, he's a millennial? So
Yeah, I think Gen X is just going to get skipped, or they might get a VP out of it. And I think there's a chance Zoomers get skipped and it goes straight to Gen Alpha.
So by contrast, you'll love this. Millennials were the most love-struck generation. 59% said that they would rather have a broke and magical relationship than one with financial security. Hollywood did a number on them. They did. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I believe. I mean, it's just like I said earlier. I mean, the birth rate reflects this, that people just don't prioritize children anymore.
I mean, is that partially because they just don't see a path for it in a lot of ways? Whether that's because they're not going to own a home, all of the many reasons. The craziest thing, I mentioned this yesterday on the show, because these things have become such a big conversation point.
Yeah.
There was debate going about Lil Tay joining OnlyFans at 18, and she's
Very
making
gross.
she's making all of these like trolling videos about her joining OnlyFans, and people are arguing about whether she should have done it or not. And one of the comments says, no, she's 18 and she's trying to hedge her bets against home insecurity.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
People like, I think people overthink. Like they try to come up with these. Yeah, they try to come up with these like really grandiose explanations for things like Trump. Like with MAGA, they want to explain it in these really academic terms because they want to be able to like intellectualize it and conceptualize it so that way they can, attack it properly. And they don't realize that like a lot of things are just vibes based. Like with MAGA, it's vibes based, and the birth rate is the same thing. It's kind of just vibes based, where it's like, above all else, I mean, you could blame the economy. You could even blame like chemicals.
Abortion plays a huge role in it too.
But
Access to abortion.
I think the primary thing is people just, if you ask them, a lot of them just don't want kids, or they don't want a lot of kids. I mean, they don't really have a good reason for it.
The primary thing is the birth control pill.
Yeah. It's like when you speak to women, generally they just don't want kids, and it's like, yeah, I suspect that some of it's chemicals with the birth control. And then some of it is just being in the workplace as well.
I feel like also the culture has developed around us to teach us to live in the moment and not consider the future. And not for as much as people are worried about the future of not owning a home, they're not considering what's going to happen when you're 80 and like who's going to take care of you. And there has been a disincentivization around the idea of like your family being a great way as a support system for everybody. You look in other cultures and they don't leave home at 18. And they don't move out right away, and the family stays together until people get married, and there's a lot of support around
I think
that.
That's like a really American thing, and it descended from like our very like Calvinist roots of individualism. Like that was actually quite common in the Netherlands and England around the same time of like America's settlement. Is people actually were really independent. This has actually been around for a while, and it's like very common, and that sort of like Calvinist ethic has carried into modern America.
I remember we were in, I was in like Bilbao, like on this street of shops in Bilbao, Spain. And it was like late at night on a Tuesday. This is the summer, but it was like late at night on a Tuesday. And I was talking to, I was on tour with like a company that I skated at that time, but there were a lot of locals out there and everybody's out there drinking. And they were basically saying how everybody there, they live at home and they party until they're 27, and then they immediately settle down with their family and move out.
I went to Madrid and we stayed with this family, and their 30-year-old son still lived with them, and that's just very common there. And I think the American, by extension, like the Anglo way of doing things, is superior because like we have the best countries. The problem is now we're on we're the first wave to like go down. Yeah. Like America, Canada, Australia, like we're kind of on the front end of the economy collapsing, the system collapsing. They're not far behind us. They just take longer. But I think our way of structuring family is the superior way. Like I don't actually envy that. I think it kind of sucks, but for them it's normal. So.
Yeah. It said many daters also they say love has a limit. In a minimum salary, nearly half of Gen Z said they wouldn't date someone who's unemployed. Oh, I know plenty of people who have that for some reason dated somebody who's unemployed, like terminally unemployed. But even if they were attracted to them, they wouldn't date someone who's unemployed, a factor that beat out political differences as a deal breaker. Well, that's good.
Yeah. No, Zoomers are definitely like...
Have a job.
Yeah, Zoomers definitely have like way too high of standards. Like that's why looks matching is like the most horrifying procedure you can go through, is realizing what your looks match is. That strikes fear into every Zoomer's heart, because like for whatever reason, well, it's actually pretty easy to explain, is when you're on social media, you're being exposed to the most beautiful people constantly around the clock. So that's where your standard is. So I think that's why a lot of people aren't.
Everybody should do everything they can to lose weight, because everybody's in America. Like 75% of America is overweight.
Yeah.
So, or you know, if you're one of the 75%, you should be doing everything you can to lose 10 or 20 pounds. Most people probably need to lose a little bit more. But if you're unhappy with the way you look, lose some weight, and you're gonna look better.
It says Gen Z's mind state is shaped by years of economic instability, including the aftermath of the 2008 recession, ballooning student debt, and pandemic-era job losses. The pressure to focus on finances likely feels so urgent because of the economic uncertainty that Gen Z has dealt with most of their lives. I mean, that's something that millennials also.
Yeah.
It didn't seem. I think partially because at that time you weren't on your phone intellectualizing everything that was happening in the world all the time. You just kind of took the circumstances as they came and tried to make the best of it, which probably kept you sane a hell of a lot longer. You had to listen to Kesha, but other than that, it was fine.
Yeah, like this is another example of like they're totally overcomplicating, because they're trying to intellectualize this problem so they can provide a solution for it. But it's like, no, the mindset is not shaped by like the 2008 financial. We were like the oldest Zoomers were probably 12 years old when that happened. So it's like, and you can't throw money at this issue and solve it. I mean, every country that has like a really low birth rate has tried to chuck money at the issue, and it's clearly not the problem.
No, money is actually part of the problem.
Right.
Like wealthy countries have lower birth rates. That's
yeah.
And it's the same all around the world. Once you take people out of poverty and bring them to, you know, not even like the United States, but just bring
security.
them into, you know,
they know where their next meal's coming.
Having security. Most of the time it turns into a lower birth rate.
Yeah, so it's like blaming this on economic instability is just like I'm sure somewhere up the line there's some truth to it, because like I said, the primary reason here is like neuroticism. Like Gen Z is the most neurotic generation yet.
That tracks, because I'm not Gen Z, but I am a fairly neurotic person. It took like a long time to get my life in order in a way that was going to make it plausible for me to like.
But if you think of like all the reasons that you could probably diagnose, or all the contributing factors for Gen Z's neuroticism, there's some very obvious lifestyle changes that Gen Z has that previous generations didn't have.
Like what?
Like constant like phone usage, growing up on the internet,
bed rotting,
Adderall
and vapes,
low social capital. Like you don't see people very often, and it's like that's probably a much larger contributor to the economic instability. But if you blame it on economic instability, that gives you a cause where you can then pursue political agendas.
I saw an article yesterday, maybe we'll talk, or I saw an article today, maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. It said like Gen Z is too broke to afford friendship.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's like having friends is too expensive, which I guess there's like an argument, like if you live somewhere where like all your friends are like, let's go to the bar, let's go see a live show, let's go do this and that, but they're not doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to the bar. Bars are shutting down in mass, and the millennials are the ones going to the distilleries and the breweries. It's not Gen Z that's doing that. It's the millennials with their suspenders and listening to Stomp Clap and going to eat at Thistle and Thorn.
Yeah, I guess I'm just tired of GDP brain. Like people have GDP brain and they want to attribute every problem to like something to do with the economy, something to do with finance.
Do you think it's because it's GDP brain, or at least anything that involves that level of data gives you a bunch of bullet points to point at and say this is why? It's easier to quantify down in some type of pseudo intellectual way.
Yeah, well, and it
is vibes.
It gives you that's true. It gives you hope that it's like, okay, if we solve these issues, then we can get out of this. And it's like, that's just not like,
it's not how it works.
It's not, I mean, I'm not denying that, like, you know, home ownership being lower, like not owning a home does provide a tremendous source of anxiety. Like there's no doubt about that. But that's like, you could solve all these people's financial problems and they would still have the same problems for the most part, because most of the problems are just the way that people, the way that Gen Z matriculated into the world was drastically different from previous generations.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now we're having financial problems, but these problems started when we were like 18, 19 or 17, 18, 19, when like money wasn't necessarily the biggest issue.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.